coat day. It's
Their mics are on and hot.
swimming pool day, that's what it is. I see my smile. Good evening, Commissioners. It's 5:30.
All right, thank you very much. Welcome, everyone. We're going to go ahead with our pre-commission agenda. Does anyone have any comments or questions other than the agenda? All right.
Madam President.
Oh, Commissioner Pickering?
I just wanted to take a minute to thank you for your leadership with the joint meeting with ITD today, ITD. So I just want to say thank you for that.
Well, thank you. I'm glad you were able to come. It was a nice surprise having you walk in the door. So thanks for being here. Thank you. Any comments or concerns about the agenda? All right, seeing none, over to you, Mr. Daigle.
Madam President, just one short thing on for the director's report. This week we received 2 new distributions of funds that are earmarked for transportation. One is the result of increasing the sales tax distribution to 4.5% on any amount over $80 million. And that was distributed to the local entities. It came to $5 million for us and change. The second is the result of Governor Little's Leading Idaho initiative, and that was the $200 million in total funding that got distributed. And we received almost $14.8 million off that, the grand total right around $19.7 million that is now in the general fund.
Well,
Madam President.
That's awesome. Thank you very much. Commissioner Goldthorpe.
When we were speculating earlier in this year about this, what were we really thinking we were going to get? I know it was substantially less.
What, about 4 million?
About 4 million all total.
Wow.
I believe that Sherwin, if I remember right, Sherwin, you can help me with this. When it first was announced with the sales tax, I believe Sherwin predicted 4.8 million.
Ooh.
So demand's good.
And Steve predicted, what, 700,000?
So.
I'm glad you're a lawyer, not an accountant.
Yes, Madam President, Commissioners. The one thing I have to do is apologize. In terms of the money that we received, it was my belief during the legislation that the money would go through the highway distribution account and it would be restricted by the 709. When we got the checks from the state treasurer, it's clear that the money that came to us is related to sales tax. So our sales tax portion of our revenue will increase significantly. So I just want to make sure that I clarified that once we learn that.
Okay, thank you very much for the clarification. Appreciate it.
The only other item I have for you is before you leave tonight, we'll be handing you your budget books that you can look over in preparation for next week. Commissioner Pickering, yours will be at the front desk in the morning. So Christine is frantically putting those together as we speak.
All right, thank you. Good to know. Thank you, Christine.
Unless you have any questions, we can take a short break.
Hold that thought. Commissioner McKinney?
Just to follow up on what Commissioner Goldthorpe asked about, we were talking about the sales tax number.
Mm-hmm.
What about the other number that we're talking about? How does that compare to what we were expecting?
That was pretty darn close to what we were expecting
Okay.
in my memory. I don't remember exactly, but it seemed like it was somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 million.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Very good.
Yeah, no, Madam
Commissioner
President.
Hanson?
Yeah.
So for the
unrelated
record, the
question.
lawyer was right about that.
Oh, okay. Noted. Commissioner Hanson?
Yeah, thanks, Paul. I just have some questions because I've been out looking at in this heat. I know the chip sealing gets limited during this heat, and I was noticing a number of other construction sites, and I don't blame them. They weren't there. Is there any estimation with looking at the triple digits now continuing on for another perhaps 2 weeks? Are we anticipating how this is gonna hit? I mean, it hit us last year.
Yes, it did.
It's gonna hit us maybe even worse this year. How are we dealing with that?
Well, let's
Including our
ask the expert.
contractors who are out there dealing with it.
It's a little more sustained, it
It's
seems.
very
this year, too.
sustained. It's
Yeah.
really
It's gonna
tough.
take her a minute to get here.
Oh, that's how I wanted you to answer, Mr.
Yeah,
Weigel.
just-
Yeah, there's a microphone.
Right? Yeah, so when we do our forecast for the number of lane miles that we're gonna do, we do know that we're gonna have several periods of days where it's over 100 degrees. We've been watching the temperatures, and we can usually get out there around 2 o'clock is when we start seeing those higher temperatures. So we're making really good progress in the mornings, and then we're just doing more breaks in the afternoon as we're right around 100. So far, we haven't had to really pull in operations short yet, so they're still making really good progress. So we're not, the only thing that really put us behind schedule in the first part of the year were some of those really cold days that we had up on Bogus Basin. And then the paint shortage kind of changed
Right.
some of our priorities for a while. But I think we're back on track on all of that and making really good progress. So we're hitting about the 50% mark at this point, and don't anticipate, there were a couple of miles that we took off, or a couple of roads in CUNA that we had to take off of our proposed list because there's other work happening on those that we hadn't planned when we first made the strategy. So it's changing the plan again, but I think we're actually on target. So I think we'll be able to finish exactly where we are expecting to.
Okay, great.
Very good.
Great. It's
Thank you.
obviously we're
Madam
very
President?
concerned that we don't have any heat stroke or sunstroke or
So
any
far,
of
they've
these
been really great working with the temperatures and taking lots of breaks and a lot of water, making sure everybody's watched over closely.
things. Thanks.
Thank you,
On
Jennifer.
all of our operations, not just
Yes,
chip seal.
yes,
All
of them.
operations.
All of them, including our
Just one
the
second,
contractors.
Commissioner Pickering, Commissioner McKinney had his hand up.
Let me just, Jennifer, just one question. Have we ever considered adjusting our work schedule for chip sealing so that we like start really, really early in the morning and then, end by like noon or something like that? Has that been considered?
We have talked about that. One of the biggest issues is noise. So rolling through neighborhoods, we don't roll through the neighborhoods before 8 a.m. It's kind of noise ordinances.
Okay.
When we're on the arterials, like in the past, when we know that we've had heavy traffic areas. As an example, last year we were right in front of Wahoo's on one of these days that was like the hottest day of the year. We started it on a Sunday morning as early as we could get out. Before dark, we have some safety issues, so we need the light. And then early in the morning, if it's too cold, believe it or not, then the oil won't set up properly. So we have looked at it, and we're balancing it as best as we can to get out as early in the morning as we do. So they tend to get out, 7:30 they roll out, and then they can start operations right at 8.
Okay, thank you.
Well, good. We know you're keeping a close eye on it.
Yep.
Thank you.
Sometimes they'll take a little bit shorter lunch just
Yeah.
to maximize the first part of the day.
I'm sure they're fine with that. Yeah. Thank you, Jennifer. And Commissioner Pickering, did you have a question for Jennifer?
I did, thanks, Madam
Okay.
President. Jennifer, it's not chip sealing related, but on the paint side of things, has everything cleared up with our distributor and all of that good stuff?
Ryan will address that.
Here comes Ryan.
Oh, I can't hear you, Ryan.
There-
President May, Commissioner Pickering, we're currently receiving about 75% of what we order. So they are rationing it, and they're doing that to all of their vendors. So everyone's getting at least something. We believe that'll get us definitely through chip seal, through a lot of the striping. There will be some areas though that it will fall a little bit short this year in what we would like to do.
So I've noticed that there's been a few of and I forget the technical term, but when the bike lanes they move from being right up against the curb or the sidewalk and they move towards the middle of an intersection or in between two lanes. There's several sections that I've driven around and seen that there aren't the green sections, and there hasn't been for a while. So does that paint shortage also apply to the green paint, and or kind of what's kind of the process to get some of those pathways marked?
President May, Commissioner Pickering, I don't know that that's necessarily the same situation. So If there are specific locations you want us to look at, there's conditions in which we make sure we apply that green paint or not. And so if there are key locations, we'd be happy to take that list from you.
Perfect. Thank you, Ryan.
Okay, super. Thank you.
Madam President,
Commissioner Goldthorpe?
Ryan, one last thing. And you don't have to, unless you already know the answer to this question, I'm not gonna pin you down. Last fall, when we were doing our priorities and talking about, different things, there was something that was going to happen on Spring Gold and Valley in my district as far as a crosswalk project, and that takes paint. Do you know if that's still on schedule to happen?
President May, Commissioner Goldthorpe, I'll look into it.
Thanks.
And we'll let you know.
Super. Thank you, Ryan. All right, any other questions? Okay, looks like we have a few minutes before we start, so we'll take a short recess.
No, I'm doing the pledge.
All right, it's time to get started. Welcome, everyone. We ask you to please stand and join us with the pledge that will be led today by Miss Christy Little. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Christy, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam President, Commissioners. I appreciate the opportunity just to have a few minutes at the beginning of our meeting today to honor and remember Matt Schultz. Matt has been a prominent member of our development community since he started his own business here in 2005. Seems like just yesterday. Earlier this month, Matt died from injuries he received in a hiking accident in Owyhee County, doing what he loved doing. Matt's funeral services were held over the weekend, and happening now is a hike and celebration of life for Matt up at Bogus Basin. Matt was great about collaborating on his projects ahead of any surprises, and as such, some of you didn't have the opportunity to really get to know him because he rarely made an appearance here on the dais. While Matt's work has been here in Ada County, his home is Pocatello. Matt would work long hours here in Ada County during the week and then return home to his wife and kids, which we all got to know so well through Matt, for the long weekends. So although it was tough for him to be away day to day, he worked hard so that he could play hard when he was home with his family. So Matt really affected everyone in development services in different ways. And Mindy and I shared a lot of tears when we learned of his passing, but we also shared a few laughs. So I wanted to share with you generally how meetings with Matt would go. So first he would say, "I know what you're going to say, but I have to ask." And he was right. The answer was going to be no. And then he would say, "Oh, come on." And Mindy and I would laugh, and we would say no. And then Matt would laugh, and then we'd spend the next 25 minutes of our 30-minute meeting catching up on our lives and comparing notes and talking about our kids and family. And that really is how every meeting went. But Matt was so prepared with all of his projects that we had collaborated ahead of any of those discussions, and he was just great for us to work with. He had a smile and a laugh that truly brightened our office when he walked in our front doors. And he was a frequent flyer because Matt saw all of his projects through from development application all the way through construction, making sure it was all running smoothly. Matt is survived by his wife, Robin, his kids, Ryan and Kira, and his twin baby girls, Amaya and Evelyn, which he was so proud to share pictures of all of them every time he was in our office. So all of us in development services and HHD send the Schultz family lots of love and strength, and Matt will definitely be missed by his HHD family.
Absolutely, Christy. Thank you so much for sharing those special memories with us, and our hearts and prayers go out to our team members here that are experiencing this loss, and absolutely to his family and his loved ones that are here. But thank you for taking the time to be with us tonight, Christy. Appreciate it. All right. First item is to adopt our agenda. Is there a motion?
Yes, so moved.
Second?
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion passes. Next, we have the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion on these items unless a commissioner or a citizen so requests, in which case the item will be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda. All consent agenda items are commission action items unless noted. Is there a motion?
Madam President, I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Regular agenda, first item, ACHD Capital Improvements Plan, CIP and Impact Fee Ordinance Interim Update. This is a request for adoption, and it is a public hearing, so I will go ahead and open our public hearing and welcome Mr. Austin Miller.
President May, Commissioners, Austin Miller. I'm the Impact Fee Administrator here at the Highway District. This is the public hearing and decision briefing for the Impact Fee Ordinance 246A and the Capital Improvements Plan amendments. I wanted to provide a quick summary of the main items I'm going to touch on in my presentation this evening. First, I'll go over the process, sort of how we got here. Then I will discuss the revisions that we're proposing to the 2020 Capital Improvements Plan, or our CIP. I will then go over how that impacts our impact fees, discuss the feedback we've received thus far, and finally present staff's recommendation. Sorry about that. As part of the fiscal year 22 budget, the Commission directed staff to have a revised impact fee ordinance this summer. Over the past year, we have met with the Commission multiple times for work sessions to receive guidance, discuss what could be done. In that time, staff has also met with ACHD's various advisory committees to solicit their feedback as well. The CICAC is our advisory committee tasked with providing a recommendation to the Commission. Everything in staff's recommendation today was included in the CICAC's recommendation. However, staff's proposal did end up paring down a few items based on market conditions. The proposed ordinance and CIP changes have been available to the public since April 18th. The land use agencies have all been provided copies and requested their review as well. And as this is a public hearing, it has been noticed and advertised as required by state statute. To discuss the changes staff is recommending tonight, we are proposing to add 2 additional projects. Both are surrounding Technology Way. One is the street segment itself from Columbia to I-84 as a 3-lane street segment. The other project is the Technology and Columbia Way intersection. We're also proposing an update to Meridian between King and Cuna. This is a project currently in our CIP, however, it's only currently listed for 3 lanes. The proposal to 5 is to bring it consistent with the master street map and a study that is currently being conducted by the city of Cuna. A few other revisions we've made in this update. Your staff has been very busy the past 2 years, so I wanted to bring some of our active project costs to their current outstanding balance. That's a revision from what was owed 2 years ago. Any projects that we've completed in the last 2 years have been removed. We've also updated the impact fee service area balance, and the most important item is our vehicle trip generation and pass-by rates. They come from the Institute of Transportation Engineers, or ITE, trip generation manual. Previously, we were operating on the 10th edition. The 11th edition was released this fall, so we have updated all of our numbers to be consistent with the latest data provided. This data does help us determine the proportionate share as required by state statute, both the trip generation rates and pass-by. So this is the main item of the revision. These updates have resulted in the impact fee changes you see here. There was an expanded list provided in your packet. However, as you can see, some of the main land use categories are listed. Some go up, some go down, some stay essentially the same. The main reason for the change is those updated vehicle trip generation and pass-by rates we received from ITE. They affect each land use a little bit differently. In terms of feedback, we have not received public commentary on the proposal. The city of Boise did submit a letter. They're appreciative of our willingness to further explore and consider some items that we weren't able to get included in this interim update. I also spoke with the City of Meridian's Transportation Committee a few weeks back, and they had very similar comments as well. No concerns about specific projects listed in this proposal have been received from the land use agencies or the general public. And with that, staff is recommending approval and to concurrently adopt the amendments to the 2020 Capital Improvements Plan and Impact Fee Ordinance 246A. As a reminder, a supermajority vote is required for ordinance adoption, and I will stand for any questions.
All right, thank you very much, Austin. Appreciate it. Commissioners, any questions, please, or comments for Austin?
Madam President, I have a,
Mr. Hanson?
yeah, a question. Thank you, Austin, about the Technology Columbia project being added. It's not added with a lot of specificity. Technology actually comes off of Highway 20 and then it curves and sort of turns into Columbia. So is this going to be basically a different segment? How far away is this intersection from, anticipated intersection from where technology ends to where technology will pick up again going south? That is my first question, is what's the gap? Do we even know how far away that is? Because to make it effective, it has to be at the right location.
Yeah, Madam President, Commissioner Hanson, as this is just a general funding idea at this time, we do not have a design or a specific intersection location. We have a couple ideas in mind. However, as a determination has not been made, I do not have a measurement at this time.
So Madam President and Austin, this is a brand new road. It doesn't exist today. I looked at the Google Maps. There's nothing there. There's a road behind Micron that is very close to where technology turns into Columbia. But it's not that connection. It's another connection that will be made.
That is correct. This is a new roadway we are proposing.
And who owns that land that we would be building that roadway on?
At this time, I'm not entirely certain. I apologize.
You know, I think it might be Simplot or Micron or someone, a private interest. So anyway, the concern, I don't have a problem with this. I just hope that it continues. It's located in a way that can be effectively do two things. And so I'd like this to be part of the record if we're identifying the location of that intersection. One is that intersection be built in a way that calms traffic on Columbia, because that's the biggest complaint that the neighbors have, is that people come down Columbia extremely fast and it immediately then enters into a neighborhood, and Columbia functions as a collector for that neighborhood. But the width and the long distance that they drive across the desert portion invites a lot of speeding, and so it's extremely dangerous. The second is that they need an emergent second exit from that neighborhood. Now, if this is too far away from the entrance to that neighborhood, it doesn't really function as that if they get cut off, because there really is no other access point to those neighborhoods that are there. That there's an opportunity to really make this a safety issue. So I'd like that to be part of the record, that this really should be a functional second entrance, and so which suggests the intersection would have to be close to that neighborhood, because if an emergency happens and that Columbia Road is cut off, they're cut off. So those are my two comments with respect to that. I don't have a problem of us accelerating that and starting to plan that, but I'd like those to be part of the planning process, and that neighborhood be included, actively included in the location and design of that road and the intersection.
Thank you. Couple considerations there for you, Austin. Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Hanson. Any other questions or comments? Commissioner Goldthorpe?
I'd just like to say thank you for all this work. I know we all know what, the origination was of these requirements that and the hoops you guys have been jumping through all year, and it's much appreciated.
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir.
Madam President.
Commissioner McKinney.
Austin, just to clarify, these changes to the impact fee ordinance don't include any sort of changes to the provisions of the ordinance that define the types of projects for which impact fees apply. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Pickering, did you have a comment or question? No? All right. Thank you. Stacy, do we have anyone signed up to testify?
I just sent a chat, but I don't have anybody with their hand up. think, I believe we are good.
We're good? Okay. No other questions or comments? And with no further information? Nobody, oh, okay. Somebody, you saw somebody coming in. All right, well, within that, then I will go ahead and close the public hearing. And commissioners, you have this item before you.
Madam President,
Commissioner Goldthorpe.
I would make a motion that we adopt the ACHD Capital Improvements Plan and Impact Fee Ordinance interim update.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion before us. Any further discussion?
Yeah, Madam President, thank
Commissioner
you.
Hanson?
Thank you. I appreciate that the staff worked on this. It is disappointing that the one thing that was of greatest concern last year, no time was spent addressing. The city's letter talks about the issue of affordable housing, and we know there's complexity in dealing with that through the impact fee. There's lots of things that ACHD can do to make it more affordable through other processes. But they also mention in their third paragraph that they respectfully request that ACHD continue its consideration of including impact fee service areas. Continue is actually not the right word because we never began. There was no consideration or evaluation of the service areas that we put in place 10 years ago. And I think it was appropriate for us to do an evaluation of that. And the failure to do that, I think, is really, really disappointing because we had the capacity to do that, I believe. Clearly, you know, the technical changes that are now in front of us are very minimal. We do have to make a couple of changes to make sure we're referencing updated manuals. But if you saw the red line edition, there's very, very minimal changes. The other, of course, is that there's language in here that I objected to 2 years ago. I object to this year. I'm not going to vote against it. But this whole notion and this whole analysis of this is where we're going to be spending impact fees to add lanes. This is where we need additional lanes. That we call those instead of, we refer to them as improvements. Adding lanes is an enlargement. Whether it's an improvement is a judgment call. It should be an enlargement or an expansion and not refer to it as an improvement. And it also lists and does some sort of calculation as if it were objective as to how many lane miles of congestion we have. And adding lanes doesn't really address congestion in the long run. You still have congestion. This doesn't do any analysis whatsoever of induced demand that is created when we spend money on the major arterials for widening. But it's still there. Those are the previous issues that exist to this day, and we haven't addressed them. So, and that responsibility is with the commission to lead. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Hanson. Any other questions or comments?
Madam President.
Commissioner Pickering.
Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to add that, you know, I share Commissioner Hanson's disappointment in not having more work done in evaluating the viability and the opportunity for service areas in the impact fee ordinance rewrite. That's something that my district in particular is really passionate about. I heard from so many people on the campaign trail. To this day, people want that type of responsive government from the commission. So the fact that that's not in here is really disappointing to me. And I know that we tried on the housing piece, and that obviously won't work out for this, but I want to continue to explore opportunities for us to be a partner in not making the unaffordable housing crisis worse. So yeah, I think just generally, I do appreciate staff's work on this, but I just don't think that it meets the moment that we need.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Pickering. Any other comments before we take the vote? All right, we'll go ahead and call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
All right, motion passes. Thank you. Next item, FY 2022 second budget adjustments. This is a request for approval. And we will be joined by Ms. Christine Tandler.
Fingers crossed.
You're smiling and
Yeah. Delirium.
that's a good omen.
Oh, on. Whoop, whoop. Good evening, Madam President, Commissioners. For the record, Christine Tandler, Budget Manager. I'm here before you for a decision briefing on second budget adjustments for the FY22 budget. So the original revenue budget was 150.6 million. After the first approved adjustments, we were at just under 158 million. Proposing an increase to $176.1 million on the revenue side. As spoken to earlier, the Techum funding and the Leading Idaho funding is a big portion of that increase. On the operational side, we are looking at a slight decrease from the approved adjusted operational budget. Having gone through the process with the FY23 budget, there are some changes and equipment moved to FY23, as well as some opportunities where it was better. Was a better opportunity for us to purchase the equipment rather than lease. That's why you'll see that adjustment. And then the reduction in liquid asphalt due to the combination of having one chip seal crew this year. Temporaries, again, another result of the market that we are seeing right now. So a proposed operational budget of $74.2 million. On the capital side, we are looking at increasing the capital budget. A significant amount of this is related to the additional funding for the federal aid project. There is about $9 million budgeted for and proposed in FY23 for that project to be received in FY23. We also have just under $9 million in projects that are going to be rescheduled. A significant dollars of those related to DBIP and Kootenai. On the summary sheet, you'll see that we have proposed expenditures of $158.8 million, a variance of $17.3 million. It's a different slide. We're proposing the $8.8 million to be moved into FY23, and that site development, this should say it's for maintenance and priority corridor. I had misunderstood in a meeting. So it's for priority corridor funding for maintenance and bridges expenditures coming forward. So I apologize for that. Staff recommends approval of the FY22 second budget adjustments as outlined in the staff report, and I will stand for any questions.
All right, thank you very much, Christine. Commissioners, any questions, please, or comments for Christine?
Madam President?
Madam,
Oh.
go ahead.
Sorry, Commissioner Pickering?
Oh, thanks, Madam President. Just one clarification, Christine. On the attachment that we got in our packet, it was talking about that the Kootenai Phase 3 was rescheduled. But I was wondering, in the proposed budget presentations that you provided us, there's a huge chunk that is taken up by Kootenai there. So what is Phase 3 part of next year's proposed budget, or can you kind of explain those timelines and the different phases for Kootenai specifically?
Right. Madam President, Commissioner Pickering. So initially when we started the Kootenai project, we were thinking we were going to build it in 3 phases. However, at this time, we're building all of them at the same time, but they're still split out in the budget software and the integrated 5-year work plan software with all of the phases and all of the segments broken out. We're working through to be able to combine all of those into a more unified project. But because we initially thought that we would be doing it in various phases, we set that up to be able to budget appropriately. But now that they're all together, so it's when we look at the Kootenai Street, was bid all together. So phase 1s, 2, and 3 are all one. Just doesn't say one. but we're working through getting that combined now that we have that bid approved.
Okay, so it's just because we were delayed in getting the bid that it's rescheduled then?
Yeah, well, so Kootenai was the one, Madam President, Commissioner Pickering, Kootenai is the one that we originally went out to bid for a couple months ago and got 0 bids. So that was when we changed the schedule and allowed for it to go into FY23. So they'll be starting soon. So there's a small portion of the budget in FY22 and the remainder will be in FY23.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, it's gonna be good to have this project moving forward. I'm glad to see that.
Thanks, Madam President.
Commissioner Hanson?
Yeah, thank you. And Christine, I know this is probably prepared before last week. Each of the lists of the projects and the project nature are described based upon the actual streets names. But we continue to just generally refer to DBIP or Downtown Boise Implementation Plan. And I'd ask that we list out the streets that are left to be done, because this is the largest item. It's $2 million. And it's to be done in coordination with CCDC. Now, I know I asked this last week, that it's very difficult for the public when they look at our lists and they don't know where downtown this part of the implementation plan will be done. And so it's really important that we specify where, because downtown's a big area and we've finished in a sizable portion of that. So we're not there, but we are, there are streets that we are supposedly going to be doing next year. And that's why I would like that description to be really clear as to where downtown it's affected. That'd be, and I did ask that last week, so I did want to make sure that
Right.
it starts to change. Thank you.
Madam President, Commissioner Hanson, on that, the descriptions in here are how we track the overall project. The details of the project are housed in the integrated 5-year work plan. So we do have a character limit. So we do our best to try and figure out how to get those names in. But we'll take note of that.
That'd be great, because of course this was a public document. People looked at it on our website and it was attached to the agenda. So it really is helpful for me to get input from people looking at it so that they know. I know there's ways in which we communicate internally something, but anything we're going to be communicating to the public about, we should make sure it's clear what street we're talking about.
Have a little bit more specificity out there. So
Yeah, we run into the same thing with the federal aid capital maintenance and the residential capital maintenance. To list all of those streets, we would have a line item budget that's 4,700 pages. But yes, I understand the desire for that.
Madam President?
Commissioner McKinney?
Yes, Christine, I wonder if, I don't know if the slides are still available. I'd like to go back to page 1 of the slides you showed. I apologize for taking us all the way back there.
Is it my name? Is that the one? Is that the one we have a question about?
Okay, sorry, page 2.
I'm just kidding. I was just kidding.
So the federal aid cost share item went down by 652,000. What is that referring to?
So, hang on, let me get these. So on the federal aid and the cost share, that's why I bring all my details. So a significant number of those, about $300,000 of that relates to the Linder overpass. Took us longer to get under contract than we had originally anticipated. That's the one where we're anticipating the revenue from the city of Meridian to do that concept study for the overpass over Linder. And then there are some with the federal aid projects. When the federal aid project is in the design phase, we pay all of those costs up front and then submit those invoices to ITD, and they reimburse us at the 92.66%. So when we have a project that starts later in the year, we move the revenue and we move the expenditure. And so it turns out to be closer to a net zero on some of those changes, because with federal aid, our total cost is just the 7.34%, with the caveat being the one that we paid the full amount, and we'll wait for that reimbursement.
Okay, so this is just accounting, moving things around for accounting reasons, basically.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
What about the Commuteride adjustments?
So the Commuteride adjustments, yeah, let me get some details on those. So Commuteride is dealing with some of the same situations and predicaments that we all are with trying to get equipment and trying to get vans. In fact, they had a van order approved and got notice from their vendor that they just canceled the order. So we were reducing the revenue. We also reduced the expenditure for those vans. They're hoping to get that taken care of some in 23. They did keep some funding in FY22 to see about getting some of the smaller vans that we've had some success in getting routes for. But a bulk of that is related to supply shortages and us not being able to get the vehicles.
Okay, all right.
Non-delivery.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, Commissioner Goldberg?
Now, but I have a comment and a congratulations to Commissioner McKinney for his valiant effort to stump Christine. Apparently failed again.
I don't expect ever to stump her.
Oh.
It'll be a rare day.
Oh, I have almost a 6-year-old. He tries every day,
I was gonna say,
valiantly.
probably daily on that. Thank you so much, Christine.
Absolutely.
Commissioners, this is an item, a request for approval.
Madam President, I would move that we approve the second budget adjustment.
All right, is there a
Second that.
second? All right, we have a motion before us. Any further discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that one's done. Thank you very much, Christine.
Thank you.
Now we'll move on to the next item, FY22 third quarter impact fee report. Shuffle your papers and whenever you're ready.
All right. Madam President, Commissioners, again, Christine Tandler for the record budget manager at Highway District. Here to report the impact fee program balance for the end of the third quarter of FY22. This is an informational briefing. We began the fiscal year with a program balance of $7.5 million. To date, through June 30th, we have collected just under $20 million and spent just over $14 million, giving us an ending third quarter balance of $12.6 million. The main impact fee projects are Amity, Maple Grove, and again on Maple Grove, Victory to Overland, the completion or the working through the completion of the construction of that. The $900,000 for Chinden and Star that we paid to ITD for our share of that project, as well as 10 Mile and Victory, and then the 10 Mile Victory to Overland project as well that is part of that. The extraordinary impact fees began the year at $2.5 million, and we are at $2.8 million. In accordance with the amended ordinance 246 that went into effect October 1st of 2020, the new one has that you recently approved has not gone into effect, reports the impact fee program loan balance has been repaid and has a balance of $12.6 million. I will stand for any questions.
All right, very good. Thank you very much, Christine. Any questions? Commissioner McKinney?
Yes, thank you, Madam President. Christine, is it, and maybe this isn't a question for your side of things, but it's my understanding that the impact fee fund is not intended to have a balance. We're intended to be using them as they come in. Is that a fair statement?
Correct.
And
Mr.
maybe
Price?
we should have Steve for that.
Do you want my notes?
Madam President, Commissioner Steve Price, General Counsel, Commissioner McKinney, the idea when the impact fee program was developed that you have a CIP that's 20 years, and the scheduling of those projects fluctuates over time in terms of expenditures, and so we know that some years you're going to have a deficiency because you have so many impact fee eligible projects planned. And then in other years you don't have as many, and so you're going to see a surplus. And that's the life cycle of the impact fee program, the revenue life cycle. And that's what you're seeing now in terms of the number of projects that we've done in the past. And more recently we haven't done, I think last year we had one. And so when we collect those impact fees, you're going to see a surplus like you're going to now. And as you get into the budget and you look at the amount that's being proposed to be impact fee projects that are planned, then you'll likely see that go down. And it usually goes in 5-year cycles. We did a study in 2004, I think, that projected 20 years out and what the revenue for every year, what it would look like. And it's, oddly enough, it's pretty consistent with that kind of balance. One year, you know, we had a lot of impact fee eligible projects, and if you recall, we had a deficit of almost $50 million. And that was just the way that we programmed those projects during that particular period of time. But the impact fee revenue, we haven't done as many projects in the last couple of years. And so that revenue has changed that balance, and now we're at 17 million or 12 million.
Okay, so the study that was done that you're talking about, that was 2 or 3 years ago? Is that what you're saying?
No, it was 2003 or 4.
Okay, so we haven't looked at that more recently then?
No, it was really just it was done as an illustration of the impact fee program is it has to be financially constrained in that way.
Right.
And you have to be able to, and we've had, some of you recall, we've had a lot of debates about whether we call it an impact fee loan balance or whether we call it something else. That's really an accounting principle, but it's really to account for that fluctuation in revenue to pay for those projects in the way that they're programmed.
Okay, because the reason I asked the question is that I have a sense, and I may be wrong, but it's my sense that we've pushed an awful lot of dollars away from impact fee eligible projects, and that's a large part of the reason why we've got such a large surplus right now. And that's one of the things that concerns me, and I don't know if that's something we can address right now, but it is a concern that I think we ought to address as a commission as we go into this budget cycle.
Madam President, that's and I don't know. I don't think staff's done that analysis. But if the commission would like us to take a look at that, we can.
Yeah, I really would.
We can do that.
So,
thank you.
thanks. Madam President, I appreciate Commissioner McKinney's concerns, and this just addresses them. My perspective on this, having been on the commission now for 10 years, is that the property tax raisers did, loan a lot of money in order to move forward on some big projects, but you can only build 10 Mile once. So once you built it, so we're reaching a point, we may be reaching a point. I don't think it's that we don't have impact fee eligible projects. It's that there's so much of the demand, the need out there is not impact fee eligible, even though growth is forcing it on us. And that we've experienced this tremendous amount of growth. There's been a lot of growth and a lot of expenditure by developers throughout the entire county, but significant portion of that, those impact fees can't be spent near where it's generated. And so because our definition of what's eligible hasn't changed, but we've built out a lot of the things that we set out to build years ago, I think we're gonna see a continuing growth in the impact fee balance, not because we are holding back on those, but simply because there's so much that is not eligible under the definition of impact fee eligibility. It has to increase the capacity, not address the other impacts of growth. And so that's a long-term, yes, that's a policy challenge that this commission needs to deal with. Otherwise, we will continue to see a growth in this fund, even as growth occurs. And yet we've insisted on keeping the definition of what's eligible. We don't even spend on collectors. We had that discussion a number of years ago. We don't even spend it on new collectors because those are not impact fee eligible.
All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Madam President, just one additional thing
Christine?
for Commissioner McKinney. There is a time frame on these, so the funds are spent in first in, first out. So we have 10 years for the roadways and up to 20 years for the any sort of stormwater mitigation impacts on those.
All right, thank you very much. So Christine, this does not require any action on our part.
Correct.
So we appreciate your update and your report. Thank you. That takes us to the fourth item, resolution number 2387, vacation of public right-of-way for GC Flex LLC at West Ustick Road and West 42nd Street. And this is a request for adoption, and it is also a public hearing. I will go ahead and open the public hearing and welcome Mr. Serter. Hello.
Hello, Madam President.
You beat me to the punch.
For the record, David Serdar, right-of-way supervisor, Ada County Highway District. This is a vacation, public hearing and decision briefing on a property that is actually adjacent to and a part of Ustick roadway and also adjacent to 42nd Street. Sometimes I'm technologically challenged. The applicant is GC Flex LLC, and they requested a vacation of 30,000 square feet. ACHD received their application along with their application fee and an appraisal, which the value was determined to be $360,000. This is the area of the vacation. Right there, you can see it hatched in red. That's Ustick Road as it comes kind of off that hill there and hits Curtis, which Curtis then turns into Veterans. This property was acquired when ACHD built this portion of Ustick Road, and it was classified as right-of-way, which is why we're here as a vacation. So per statute, any existing easements will be maintained within the vacation area. Here's a closer view of the site. ACHD has used this area for storage, and right-of-way has already coordinated with our maintenance group and our traffic op groups for its removal, and we'll be timing the actual transfer of property with the removal of any of our storage items that are there. And right-of-way is also coordinated with the applicant on that issue. It is staff recommendation that the commission adopt and sign resolution number 2387 as staff has completed all commission and staff requirements. Applicant has completed all commission and staff requirements. I'll remain standing for any questions.
All right, thank you very much. Commissioners, any questions, comments for Dave?
Madam President and Dave, thank you. As you know, it brings joy to my heart when I see us getting stuff off of the public ownership. My question is though, this road was built, what, 20 years ago? How long? It's been a long time. How come we held on to it so long? And do we have to wait for an applicant to ask for it? Can't we figure out a way of accelerating the vacation of, vacation of these parcels like this?
Mr. Price.
Madam President, Commissioner Steve Price, ACHD General Counsel, great question. But ACHD has used that as a storage lot and we've used it, utilized it for a number of years. That project, I think, was done in the 80s, 90s.
The 90s, yeah. I think, yeah.
And kind of a bizarre thing where it was acquired as right-of-way, placed as right-of-way. It was never converted to, basically real property owned by the district. And typically it's off the radar until somebody files an application and that's it. If it would have been real estate property, then Lori Baird and the chief of staff would tag it and would have sold it. So the fact that it was right-of-way really kind of hid it. And also the fact that we had used it for so long.
Thank you.
We were actively using it as a storage area.
Thank you. Someone's been looking at the map, and if you find any more of these, bring them.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Madam President.
Commissioner Pickering.
Thanks, Madam President. Dave, are there other parcels like this in that Garden City area by chance?
Madam President, Commissioner Pickering, off the top of my head, I can't think of one, but that doesn't mean they're not there, and I can certainly take a quick look at it and get a report back to you.
Okay, that would be great, yeah.
I can tell you situations like this do exist over all over the valley, so, and all over the district.
Yeah, I think that would be great if you could, Dave. I think just with Garden City, I mean, the footprint is so small, and with, us taking such a huge, 11-acre lot already, the more that we can consolidate where we can, I think the better, and in light of, all of our just shared joy of seeing these things come off the rules. So anyway, thanks,
Yeah.
Dave.
Yeah.
Oh,
So you can just circle back
yes,
with that information?
you bet.
Perfect. All right. Stacy, do we have anybody signed up? All right. No one in the audience? Nope. Nope. Nobody here? And no further comments by the commission? I will go ahead, unless you have any additional information, I will go ahead and close the public hearing. Commissioners, you have this before you.
Madam President,
Commissioner Goldthorpe.
I would make a motion that we adopt resolution number 2387, which is a vacation of public right-of-way for GC Flex LLC at West Ustick Road and West 42nd Street.
Second.
All right, we have a motion. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. All right, thank you very much. Good to see you. All right, our next item, reconsideration request of July 13th, 2022, commission decision, request for reconsideration. I just want to start off that we only have this procedural item before us. We're not entering into a discussion about qualifications or anything like that. This is merely a request to see if the commission would be willing to have a reconsideration of the action that took place, and only those that were on the prevailing side would be able to make said motion. But then after that, the ones that did not vote for it would be able to second a motion and then, of course, vote on it. So if we could just keep our discussion germane to that. Mr. Price?
Oh,
We'll start with you.
for the record, Steve Price, General Counsel. Thank you, Madam President, Commissioners. The original item was on before the Commission on July 13th. We received a timely, according to our policy, we received a timely request from Mayor Pierce from the City of Eagle. And since then, more recently, we received supporting letter for a request for reconsideration from the City of Star Mayor Chadwick. We've also received an email from Ada County Commissioner Beck. We received one in support of denial of the request from Mr. Anderson, and also Ms. Keith. Those are the only requests that we've received. And you most certainly laid the framework in terms of the rule. On July 13th, the Commission voted 4-1 for the appointment or the waiver of the CICAC bylaws to allow the appointment of the nominee from Ada County. Commissioner McKinney can't make a motion because under our rule, he opposed that. The four that can today would be Commissioner May, Commissioner Pickering, Commissioner Hanson, Commissioner Goldthorpe. And if you have any other procedural questions, I'm happy to stand for questions.
Yes, Madam President.
Thank you very much, Mr. Price. Commissioner Goldthorpe.
Yes, a procedural question regarding standing of the individual making the request. Does he have standing? I mean, the request needs to come from the commission as far as I understood.
Which person, I'm sorry?
Mayor Pierce.
Oh, okay. Well, frankly, the way our policy is, a member of ACHD staff or any other person objecting to any final action. So he qualifies as any other person, and I don't think he needs, I think you're questioning whether the city council.
Yeah, I just know we've had issues before
We
with
have.
standing.
Yes. But under our policy, he has standing.
Okay.
Thank you.
So if I can, to clarify then, in a situation like this, everyone has standing to request reconsideration except me. Is that,
Well,
that
yes,
correct?
yeah, and
Okay.
that is.
That's kind of odd, I
You're
think.
singled out today.
Right, and that brings up, and this is just for future reference, we maybe ought to reconsider that rule of how these things work. I think about this, and, being an attorney, of course, I sort of naturally default to, procedures in court of law where any party, who, in fact, primarily is the party who's the losing party, who has standing to request reconsideration. And it seems odd that we have a procedure, a bylaw that specifically prevents that and only allows winning parties to request reconsideration. So I think that's an odd thing that we ought to perhaps at some future date reconsider in any case.
It precludes you in this instance of making a motion, but you are able to second a motion and you are able to vote. You just cannot make the,
Right.
the initial.
Sure,
motion.
I understand that.
Okay. All right, any other questions or comments? Commissioner Pickering? No? All right. Do we have a motion? Before us? Well, I will go ahead. And as I said earlier, we've already had the discussion, and this is certainly not a reflection on lack of qualifications or expertise, so I don't want to give that impression at all. We do have two sitting mayors that have requested a reconsideration of this, and the nominating agency has also indicated that they support that. So I know we all work very hard on establishing these relationships with our partnering jurisdictions, so I really don't see how we cannot go forward and honor their requests. So absent anyone else stepping forward, I would make a motion that we grant the request for reconsideration.
I will second that.
All right, we have a motion. Is
Part of the motion would be, and when that would be heard by the commission at a date.
we could set the date
Madam President, you can do that as a follow-up motion.
as a follow-up motion.
Yes.
So after we vote on whether or not we're going to do a reconsideration?
If the motion passes, the pending motion passes, then you would
Talk
have
about
to,
date certain.
then you would have to talk about a date certain.
Okay, all right. So commissioners, we have a motion, and is there any further discussion?
Yes, Madam President.
Commissioner Goldthorpe?
Yeah, I've listened to all this. I would like Steve possibly to read to us what the basis for accepting a motion for reconsideration is.
Okay, Madam President, Commissioner Goldthorpe, as you know, the policy requires that the request for reconsideration must be supported by a written document setting new facts and information not presented at an earlier meeting, or a change situation has developed since the taking of the earlier vote. I think the fact that the bylaws would require a waiver of the policy in terms of the nominee have to come from that agency's jurisdiction, within that agency. I think the fact that you have people objecting to that would fall within, but that's not my decision. I don't, you guys decide that, I don't. But
We did discuss that in the original hearing, correct?
What's that?
We did discuss the waiver aspect of things.
Yes, and the motion with 4 to
was the
1 was
item.
to waive that policy.
Right.
And so the facts being set forward by the mayor and subsequent mayor is that they're not in support of that waiver. That they stand by what our bylaws say, and that is the nominee has to come within the boundaries of the nominating jurisdiction, in this case, unincorporated Ada County, which the nominee doesn't.
Okay, now there's also something about additional information, new information that can or needs to or come forward in order to justify a reconsideration, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so merely the objection to the waiver that was granted, is that justification for approving reconsideration?
That, Madam President, Commissioner Goldthorpe, that is not for me to decide. That is for the commission to decide as to whether they've met that threshold.
Well, before I make a decision of my own, I'd like to know what else, not what else that comes in a hearing, but if there is additional information other than this objection.
Just the objection. You do have some additional comments from Mayor Chadwick of the City of Star. Also, is some new information that, well, I shouldn't say that, an email from Commissioner Rod Beck saying that he's also not supportive of the waiver.
Okay, and there isn't also an email from Marissa Keith?
There, and I referenced those.
Right.
There's one from Ms. Keith, and there isn't any there. They're just both Mr. Anderson and Ms. Keith just provided their support for the nominee, and they don't feel that it's necessary that our policy would grant a waiver. I mean, they feel that a waiver is appropriate.
Right. Which we decided also 2 weeks ago. So I'm concerned that if that's the only reason for requesting this reconsideration, we already decided that. If there are other significant reasons to grant a reconsideration that are going to come out in another hearing at another date, then I would be very much inclined to grant the request for reconsideration. But if it's solely based on what we've already decided, I'm not.
Well,
I don't think we would know that because we're just deciding whether or not we're going to grant the request, and then that would be scheduled for another time.
And that's why I asked what. That's why I asked what the basis was.
Yeah.
And it appears that the basis is only for what we've already decided.
Madam President, Commissioner Goldthorpe, I think the only argument that could be made, and it's not by me, and that is that you have two mayors who are our partnering agencies, also an Ada County Commissioner, that don't support, and I don't know whether that would have changed your decision a couple weeks ago.
No, it wouldn't have.
But I think that's the only relevant new fact is that you're getting information from partnering agencies that are not supportive of, and that they're not supportive of a waiver of the bylaws.
Okay, and as a few of us may remember, when I gave my little speech before I voted 2 weeks ago, I was pretty upset at how political this was going. And the fact that we have only objections from those in political office doesn't necessarily help my attitude to change. So that's all I have to say.
Well, if I may, I think they're doing it from the perspective that they are the mayors of cities that are also represented on that committee. I think their other objection, or how I read that one letter, is their objection was that the individual did not live in the area as stated. So I personally think, just out of respect for the fact that they're mayors of two of our partnering cities, and I know when you made your vote, Commissioner Goldthorpe, you did say that you were, knowing the political persuasion of the commission, that you were surprised that it was, a unanimous decision. But I think maybe when they realized or heard about it and then understood that the individual did not live in the area, I'm just adding my interpretation of their letter. But we're not deciding yay or nay. We're just giving them the opportunity to.
I know, but it's all based on the waiver discussion, which has already been held. And, the fact that you were asleep at the wheel when you signed a letter or something, you know, if it was me, I'd just say, my bad, I apologize, I won't ever do it again, but I'm not gonna ask for something such as what's being asked for, because I may have intentionally or unintentionally been asleep at the wheel.
Madam President,
Commissioner McKinney?
if I may, in at least response to some of the comments from Commissioner Goldthorpe, the comment that this has been become political, this is an appointment to a committee. It's by definition a political decision. And we're faced with a situation where a number of interested parties who have and believe they have relevant information that wasn't considered when the decision was made, that strikes me as meeting the threshold for reconsideration, because we're not making a decision on the merits today. We're simply deciding whether to take more information on the decision. That's really all this is. And for that reason, the threshold for determining whether to grant reconsideration is necessarily low. We don't have to have all of the data right in front of us now. The very basic fact that these entities have come back and said, we want to rehear this, we want to have be able to bring forth additional information, I think is a perfectly fair request, and our bylaws and our rules allow for that. Even if the criticism is that they were asleep at the wheel perhaps and missed an opportunity. Nevertheless, if they have relevant information that we ought to consider, I think we ought to take the opportunity to consider it. It won't harm us in any way. It could help us in a lot of ways. And so for that, I think it makes sense to go ahead and grant the motion to reconsider.
Madam President,
Commissioner Goldthorpe.
just for the record, and this is a little history, trip back down memory lane. And I just wanted to show that there's some consistency in my thought about all of this. Years ago, we had a hearing with regards to the changing the directionality of 5th and 6th Street. And we voted one way. I voted against it. And then there was sufficient reason given by one of the affected parties on 5th and 6th Street to reconsider, and he was very specific as to some things that were not discussed in that original hearing, and I was convinced by myself to ask for a reconsideration, and as a result of the second hearing, I did change my vote. And I'm just looking for something similar, that if somebody wants a reconsideration, that they at least give us something more than we have here. That is something that I insisted on before asking for a reconsideration myself in the past, and that's exactly what I'll continue to do. And it hasn't happened.
Any other comments? I guess I'm still of the mind that, we have two mayors and the nominating agency asking for reconsideration. So you have two mayors and a commissioner that have requested that of us. And I just think we need to grant that request and move forward and set a date and discuss it then. So
I agree.
Any other comments before we take a vote? And again, this is procedural. It's not any sort of disparagement or casting aspersions on anybody's qualifications at all. This is strictly a procedural.
And I didn't say it was.
Yeah. So I just want to make that clear for the record. And that's not directed at you, Commissioner Goldthorpe. All right, well, hearing no further comments, we will go ahead and call for the vote. So all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No.
All right, motion dies. Thank you. All right, next item, public communications. I think we've kind of emptied the room. Anybody online? All right. All right. Well, thank you everybody for being here. We are adjourned. Thank you.